So, welcome everybody to today's session about the Oldham Crisis and Resilience Fund. What we're going to do today is we'll talk a little bit about the background and we'll talk a little bit about what the fund's about. So can I introduce Fran from Oldham Council who's here today. Fran's going to take us through some of the background and then I'll come on to tell you a little bit more about the detail of the grant and how you can apply. Hi, Fran.
Hi, Sharon, and good afternoon, everybody. Delighted to be here with you online today. So, as Sharon said, my name's Fran Lortman, and part of my role at Oldham Council is leading on the Crisis and Resilience Fund. So, over a couple of slides, I'm just going to share with you today kind of what the scheme's about, how it's a bit different to Household Support Fund, and what the priorities for this first year of the fund are. So, as Sharon mentioned, Household Support Fund has finished. We have 7 rounds of that, and that's gone now, and it's been replaced by something called the Crisis and Resilience Fund. In my head, and how I try and explain it is it replaces it, but it's a very different scheme with different priorities from the Department of Work and Pensions about how they wish the money to be spent. So the primary purpose of the Crisis and Resilience Fund, and as it says on the slides, is to provide a safety net for all households on low incomes. And that can be households who are in work or out of work, on benefits. It doesn't matter. It's any type of household. And the Household Support Fund previously had a real emphasis on particular cohorts. That's gone. It's basically any household who encounter a crisis and the associated financial shock with that. So there are a number of different strands to the Crisis and Resilience Fund, and I'm not going to go through them all today, but this is specifically just about the crisis element, which is the scheme that this funding is available through. So what that means in practice is something must have changed for that household to unfortunately create a financial shock. And what that might mean is some very difficult situations, like a very sudden health diagnosis, injury, a change to the household in terms of members of the household, family separation, a sudden loss of income through someone losing their job very, very quickly. It's not for an ongoing, sustained lack of income on an ongoing basis. It's because something has changed, which has put that family very sadly into a financial crisis. And as I've mentioned earlier, there are a number of scheme objectives. This bit of funding through Action Together is specifically for crisis support, but we're doing lots of other work in the council and beyond to improve individuals' financial resilience and also to bolster local support networks. So, as with lots of the household support fund rounds, this is about investment in our absolutely fantastic VCFSE sector in Oldham and working very closely with the most vulnerable low income households that experience financial crisis. And the reason for that is we know, and you tell us as well, and residents tell us that they don't always want to come to the council when a resident experiences financial crisis, or there's a lack of trust, or they don't feel able to, or aren't aware of the support, and just what an important role the VCFSE plays in supporting residents to be able to get very timely crisis support and to hopefully mitigate or even prevent the impact of that crisis within their wider household. What has been really helpful to see, and don't worry, I'm not going to go through the 100-page scheme guidance that we received from the DWP, but there are a couple of principles that Sharon and I really wanted to draw out that really matter to us, and the approach we have with working with you, hopefully, is that support to residents should be person-centred, should have the person at the centre of that, and their needs, not having to repeat their story, inadvertently cause trauma by having to do that. It should be about listening to and understanding what that person in their household need to get back on their feet. It should also avoid what DW call first come, first serve models. And what I mean by that is in the past with the Household Support Fund, some councils, some VCFSE organisations that got funding from different councils would run kind of particular points of the year where somebody can apply. What DWP are quite rightly saying is actually a crisis can happen at any time of the year. It's not something, for example, that might just happen in the winter period. And it should be that applications are available for as much of the year as possible. And lastly, crisis support should act as a gateway to wider support wherever possible to prevent that household experiencing the impact of financial crisis in the future. The importance of signposting to organisations who can support with things like debt management, for example, and being very clear that we're doing whatever we can together to prevent that crisis happening again in the future. So most of the funding that organisations request should go directly to residents. DWP are very clear about that. And in accordance with the scheme guidance from DWP, wherever possible, organisational, administrative and delivery costs should not exceed 10% of that total amount being requested. So in terms of the focus on this specific funding available to organisations supported by Action Together around crisis support, there are a couple of key focuses for us. And this isn't anything new, is continuing the focus around emergency food and particularly culturally appropriate food for residents, recognising that this often presents as the primary need for a household, sadly, as a result of the impact of a financial crisis. And that can be food directly delivered or via vouchers or something similar. The second one is the importance of essential items. And I hear so much feedback about how important this is, sitting alongside that food support, to make sure that that family, that household have dignity to keep clean, and personal hygiene products, baby items, so that families can afford things like nappies, formula and wipes. And again, whether that is provided directly in terms of those items or via vouchers where a family could choose their preference for a formula type or a nappy, for example, themselves. And the third one is clothing, with a particular emphasis on the cost of winter clothing, such as coats, jumpers, fleeces, to keep people warm during the winter, in addition to school uniform. Because again, we've heard so much feedback about the pressure that it puts on households on the run up to going back to school in September, and when children outgrow their items during the school year or lose or misplace them, and the financial impact that can have on a family as well. And again, that can be provided directly in terms of the item or via voucher where a resident can choose that for themselves. So those are the three areas of primary focus, and then we've got some secondary focuses that sit alongside that, which includes emergency energy support, which might be about bills or costs, particularly thinking about the impact of the war in the Middle East, and also the changes to the energy cap that are coming in the summer as well. Household furniture and white goods, essential items such as warm bedding and blankets, emergency and non-related household bills, such as mobile phone bills and data, transport costs, particularly about getting to medical appointments, job interviews, that kind of thing, and that not being a barrier to somebody. And again, we've got some great case studies and feedback from Household Support Fund where we've seen the impact of taking away some of those barriers for people. And lastly, and this is really important to emphasise, households with no recourse to public funds. So different authorities take a slightly different view, which is all about interpreting the DWP guidance. We're very clear at Oldham that it should be looked at on a case-by-case basis. And actually, there are lots of acts and powers available to support families with no recourse, or households or individuals with no recourse to public funds, such as the Children's Act 1989, which puts a duty on us effectively as the council to make sure that we're supporting households with children if we think there's a risk to the well-being and safety of that child. So it's really important to consider residents with no recourse to public funds, as obviously their opportunities to bring income into the house are severely restricted by the government.
Thanks, Fran. That's really helpful. I'll go
You're
into a
welcome.
detail about the grant now, who can apply and how you can do it. And welcome to those of you who've just joined us. We are recording this part of the session, and I will be sending a copy of the slides out in a little bit. But if you've got any questions, we will be stopping recording the session at the end, and there'll be time for some questions and answers. So if you want to pop any questions, make a note of them or pop them in the chat. We'll get to as many as we can at the end. So in terms of who can apply, as with the Household Support Fund, this is a targeted investment. So we're targeting it through the active participants of the Oldham Community Health Champions Network and the Oldham Positive Action Network. This is because we know that those of you who are members of those networks are working with the kind of people who you're already working with the people who, and you're already supporting the people that this support is aimed at. So if you are a group or organisation that's not previously received the Household Support Fund, we have opened this out a little bit wider. You must be a voluntary community faith or social enterprise group, locally rooted or actively working in Oldham. You must be a member of Action Together. You can register for free and we can help you with that. You must be a formally constituted group. You must have at least 3 people on your board or committee who aren't related. You need to have a bank account in your organisation's name. And as I say, anyone who's received this funding must be an active participant or become an active participant in both of those networks. If any of those are stopping you from applying, please do have a chat with us and we'll work with you to resolve any issues. What can you apply for? Um, this is very much a transition period for this fund. And although it is different from the Household Support Fund, it can be quite difficult to, or not difficult, but tricky to manage in terms of the monitoring and the level of detail we want. And we appreciate the experience that some of you already have in running this fund. So what we're saying at the moment is if you've previously received the household support from us, you can apply for a sum equivalent to the last award you received, but that will be subject to an overall maximum of £15,000. If you haven't received the household support fund previously, you can apply for up to £5,000. The reason we're doing that is because I think some of the feedback we've had from groups previously is this can be quite time consuming from your point of view to manage this fund, particularly in terms of the sort of monitoring requirements that come through the government. And it's kind of a bit of a learning experience. And I know some of the groups here have shared their processes with each other to help each other sort of manage that process. Now, we are getting a smaller amount than previously. So it may well be that even if you apply for that amount, depending on who applies and what is applied for, we may only be able to make partial awards. That's why we've tried to limit it to those amounts, but we will just have to work through all the applications received once we've got them through. In terms of key dates, applications, the form will now be live. The deadline for applications will be on Tuesday, the 26th of May. So you've got most of May to fill the form in. It is a really simple form. Those of you who had the household support from previously, it's based on that. So it's not a difficult form to complete. It doesn't take a lot of time and we don't ask for a lot of information. We only ask for more information about you as an organisation if you've not had funding from us recently, because obviously if we've got your constitution already, we've already got it. We won't ask for the same information from you again. We're anticipating that decisions will be made in early June. And we're hoping to make first payments by the end of June. Obviously, that's depending on signed grant agreements being returned, that kind of thing, just the process. The funding has to be spent by the end of March 2027. In terms of the application process, there is a link in these slides, and I will be sending these slides around to the guidance notes. A link to the application form is embedded in the guidance notes. Um, and it's like I say, it's very similar to the one we've used for previous rounds of the Household Support Fund. If you want to see the questions, we can send you a hard copy of the questions first before you try and copy those in. But just read through the guidance note first, it will explain everything. And because this is different from the Household Support Fund, it's really, really important that you read through those guidance notes carefully. We've put as much information in there as we can. Obviously, you may have questions, please feel free to give us a call before you send your application form in. If you've got any questions about the guidance, because this is the first time this particular fund has been launched, so you may have questions about it. We're making decisions. The steering group will take into account previous delivery of the household support programme. As I say, because there is a process to it, it can be quite time consuming. And I know a lot of you are very experienced in delivering that kind of support. The panel will also look at the overall range of communities supported to ensure as wide a reach as possible. The overall ranges of types of support being offered, to ensure there's no gaps in the support, and the overall range of neighbourhoods being supported. So ensure again there's no gaps in the support being offered. Um, if you are successful, as I mentioned earlier, we may need to make some partial awards, just depending on the level of applications we receive, and the number of applications we receive. We will be making the payment in two instalments. I think Fran mentioned previously about this not being on a first come first served basis. We need to ensure the support available all throughout till the end of the financial year. And obviously, we're trying to get the money out by the end of June to ensure that school holidays can be covered, but also it's really important that support is available through the winter period as well. Um, we will be doing monitoring as we've done previously. It will look slightly different, but it'll be on the same basis. So you'll have monthly returns to fill in. We're just working on those at the moment. So as soon as those are ready, we can let anyone see sort of some specimen things, but it'll be very much based on, for those who've had household support from previously, based on that kind of template, but we just need to change the questions and the kind of information we're asking for, so we are in line with the new guidance that's come out. And we will ask groups to provide a case study at the end of the grant period as well. I've mentioned that payment will be made in two instalments, but as we have done previously, we will monitor that on a monthly basis. So if you're struggling to spend your overall allocation, then we may sort of reallocate that if you think that you're not going to be able to spend it all in time, to ensure that none of it is wasted. But we will speak to you before we make any changes. So there won't be any opportunity for any additional funding, however. So you need to monitor your spend carefully, because if you do overspend, I know that has happened in sort of previous years, we haven't got any sort of fallback funds to go to. So just be really careful with your spending. And if you do spend up, let us know straight away. Because what will happen is the funded support offer will be published via our website, and then Oldham Council's website will have a link to that. So we can update our website really quickly in terms of what support is available. So if your support isn't available, let us know. We can take that down straight away, so people won't look as though you're still being able to provide support, so that people aren't contacting you. Um, Okay, next. So top tips really. Please do read the guidance notes on this one. I know it sounds like a really silly statement to make, but because this is new, it's different from the last one. please do, Ethan. Please do get in touch if you've got any questions about it, and please just answer the questions that we put in the forms. I know it's tempting to kind of put loads of other information in sometimes, but we just ask for the information we need. And then if we're not sure, please do ask. You know, this is a new fund for us as well. So it's the first time we've done this particular one. And although it's similar to the Household Support Fund, it is different. So we may have questions ourselves once we start, you know, once you start looking at it, and that's absolutely fine. Please do just get in touch and ask us if you've got any questions. So just in terms of contact information, obviously, if you've got any questions about the programme, please speak to me. If you've got any questions about the actual process itself or eligibility, or you know, if you've had household support from before, or what your amount was, or anything like that, please speak to the Oldham Grants team. You can contact them via the funding email address, but I think most of you here will have already been in touch with either Candice Southern or Martin Nolan, both of who are on the call today. You know, get in touch with them if you need any sort of information about the process or eligibility or anything like that. If you want more information about the Community Health Champions Network itself, about how you can join, how you can become a member, or if you need any more information about it, contact Stan. And then if you want any more information about the Positive Action Network, contact my colleague Laura Norris, who will be able to help you with any questions you've got about either of those networks in terms of next meetings or information or how you can join or whatever.